I call this meeting of the Davenport School Board of Directors to order. We'll start with the vision statement. Director Crumwitty, would you read that for us?
Thank you, Mr. President. Our vision statement, education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you. Next is communications, June 25th, 6:30 to 8 p.m., Community Workshop 6 at Central High Cafeteria. July 1st, 5:30 p.m., Committee of the Whole meeting, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. July 3rd, 4 p.m., Policy Committee, ASC Executive Boardroom. July 8th, first day to file nomination papers for school board election on 9/10. The election will be on 9/10/13. July 8th, 7 p.m., regular meeting, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. Next is open forum for community input. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. The board is appreciative of the community's interest in our deliberation regarding school boundaries and open enrollment. We value input that will allow us to make a thoughtful decision in the educational best interest of our students. However, remarks that reflect negatively upon specific schools or disparage the students and staff assigned to those schools will be called out of order, and the speaker will be asked to conclude the remarks immediately. We have 2 open forum requests. And each of you will have 2 minutes when you come up. First is Steve Grubbs, and after Steve is Larisha Tott.
Thank you, Mr. Johansson. I am here with good news tonight. Friday night we returned from
Steve, I'm sorry. I got to have your name and address.
Steve Grubbs
before you start.
From Davenport, 5200 30th Street Southwest,
Thank
Davenport,
you.
Iowa, 502. That's all off time. So I'm here with good news. We returned Friday night from the National Debate Tournament in Alabama, and the debate team of Greg Windeconnect and Noah Kirschbaum represented Davenport West. And what's notable is this. My experience with the debate team goes all the way back with Ralph's brother, Roy, when we debated back at Davenport West in the early 80s. So I know about 40 years of history. And this is the best debate team that Davenport West has had in probably its 50-year history, but at least in the last 40 years. When they went to the national tournament last week, they went through the first 6 preliminary rounds. They qualified to get out of pool play and into the playoffs. Then you have 2 rounds. It's a double elimination tournament. So they won round 7, lost 8, kept going to be national champions. You have to win 15 rounds. Finally, after the 12th round, they were eliminated. And just to put that in perspective, about 2,500 teams try to qualify for the national tournament. 200 teams ultimately do qualify, and our team from Davenport West finished in the top 20 in the country. So they did extremely well. And just to give you, I know I'm about out of time and I need to touch more, but to put it in perspective, last year when I judged at the national tournament, I saw just a fantastic team near the finals that I judged. And I went back and I said, boy, you guys have to be as good as this team. They were so good. And then we went to a Chicago tournament, Glenbrook's, one of the top tournaments in the country, in October, and they faced that team, just their team from Oregon, and we got crushed by them. And so we retooled. We looked at what we were doing. They went to the Dowling Catholic tournament, one of the top tournaments in the country. They won it. They faced them last week, and they beat that team. And so that's how good they are. If I could have 15 seconds more, I know. Here's what I want to say.
You said good things about our kids.
Here's what I want to say. Thank you for what you do for our team. Thanks for paying for our way to the national tournament. What we need to continue to succeed next year is a 15-passenger van for 10 tournaments. That's what we need. That's what we want you to think about. When Harold Keller was there, he used his own van, his own 15-passenger van. We don't have that anymore. Our team's too big to get by with parents driving anymore. Thank you.
Steve, thank you. Next is Larisha Tott.
All right. Good evening, Larisha Tott. I'm here to voice my opinion on the whole grandfathering.
Larisha, I need your address too.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3019 West 72nd Street, Apartment 2, Davenport, Iowa.
Thank you.
Okay. Now I'm here to voice my whole opinion on the grandfather situation. Not only is it unfair, but I find it to be unnecessary. For one, I have 4 children who are on the same school, 2 of which were in the Head Start program at the school Buchanan. I'm sorry. And one of my children is 5 years old, so he'll be going into the kindergarten. It would have been at Buchanan had the open enrollment not been, canceled or no longer allowed. So he might have to go to the school in our local area, whom I've switched my older 2 out of because of they're not able to accommodate my kids and their special needs. I have a son who was I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. I have a son who needed a lot of evaluation by certain specialists that the school in our area was not able to do, or they weren't equipped as the school they're in now. And the staff here at Buchanan, their concerns, they play a huge part in how far my son has came. He's going into 2nd grade, and he's now reading, writing, knows his sentences, knows his address. He's, he was kind of behind. He was attended, once again, the school in our area for kindergarten, where he wasn't able to comprehend the things that other kids in kindergarten are able to catch on to. So just the school that he's in is a lot better school educational wise, and I feel like I'm going backwards for my 5-year-old to have to attend that school in our local area. And maybe if he's having some educational needs as my older son did, it won't be able to be filled at the school in the area that we live in. That's the whole point. That's the whole reason why they're on the open enrollment. Okay. And so yeah, that's just basically all I was saying. Is just a better school is better accommodation for my kids and their education.
Thank you, Larisha. And thanks to both of you and to everybody that participates in our open forum. Move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Crumwitty.
I move the consent agenda as presented by the administration.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. Director Crumwitty?
Yes.
Director Zamora?
Yes.
Director Sherwood?
Yes.
Director Robertson?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
My vote is
It's not written down. You just have to say it.
I was just thinking about it. My vote is yes. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation on the adoption of the bills from bill listing period 6 June through 19 June 2013. Resolution as follows. Resolved that all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the Secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and as they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the Treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods 6 June 2013 through June 19, 2013, with the following voided checks. Those being checks number 308047, payable to Satco Supply in the amount of $55.33, being the wrong amount, and check number 308077, payable to Thompson Publishing Company in the amount of $433.99, again the wrong amount.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Zamora?
Yes.
Director Sherwood?
Yes.
Director Crumity?
Yes.
Director Robertson?
Yes.
Director DeFow?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Superintendent report?
Mr. President, I have none this evening.
Thank you. Move on to other items requiring action. May I have a motion regarding approval of plans and specifications for the district-wide security cameras, Phase 1.
Mr. President,
Director Robertson.
I move that we accept the administrative recommendation and approve the plan and specification as presented for the district-wide security cameras Phase 1 project.
Is there a second? We will now hold a public hearing on the district-wide security camera Phase 1 project as published in the Quad City Times on Friday, June 14th, 2013. Anyone wishing to speak on this project, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Director DeFow.
I have a question relevant to the memo that you had in our board packet, and you referenced to the fact that there are 3 different vendors which integrate cameras, door ajar sensors, and proximity card readers, the software for those. Are
Correct.
we using proximity card readers at this time?
We are going to be implementing them as part of the process, yes. We have them at Wood currently, and we will be integrating them through, so we have we can tell who's been in and out when and what time and wherever.
Okay, so that's staff
Yeah, staff,
only.
correct,
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Any additional discussion? Director Kluhl.
The board has had considerable discussion on cameras, and we've talked about this, I think, at a couple of committee of the whole meetings. And I just want to clarify that the entire board has safety as one of our primary concerns for our students, but I wanted to explain that my own vote on this particular issue is going to be no, that being because of what I consider to be a slippery slope issue, and that is the increasing number of video cameras that we're putting in our buildings. In my way of thinking, there are ways to deal with concerns for safety of our students in other ways that involve our students. That is empowering our students and staff to be responsible for their behavior rather than looking over them in a 1984 apocalyptic kind of way. So I imagine that at some point in the future, probably 2 or 3 years down the road, this board will have the opportunity to vote on drones. I do not believe that I'll be voting for drones either. I know that many of the board members do not see things the way I do, but I've gotten used to that over the last decade, so I just wanted to clarify why my vote will be no.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? We'll call for the vote. Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
No.
Director Zamora.
Yes.
Director Crumity.
Yes.
Director DeFow.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a vote on the 20AD school-based supervision?
Mr. President,
Director Zamora.
I recommend that we approve an amendment to the contract with the Juvenile Court Services of the 7th Judicial District and the Iowa Department of Human Services dated July 1st, 2008, for school-based services for a term of July 1, 2013 through June 30, 2014, for $183,045.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Sherwood.
Could I get just an overview of, I'm interested in what our sharing agreement is, what part the juvenile courts picks up, how much we pick up, is there a percentage, do we cover it all, how's it work?
And maybe one of her last statements, I'll turn to Dr. Amelia, who can talk about this. And,
I'd be happy to address that question. This agreement with the juvenile court is for 6 juvenile court liaisons, 1 in each of the high schools, that would be 4, 1 each in 2 intermediate schools. Okay. The current proposal is that the salaries for those positions be split evenly between the juvenile court system and Davenport schools, 50-50. Okay. Then there is an arrangement on the benefits which approximates that, but is slightly more for family insurance in terms of on the part of the school district. So it's for 6 people, 50-50 on salaries, slightly more for the district on benefits because of the family insurance for some of those folks, not all of them. And it's been a strong relationship, at least in the years that I've been here, between the juvenile court and the school district. Does that answer your question, Mr. Director Sherwood?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And I'd just like to say, Mr. President, that I had the pleasure and honor of working with juvenile court liaison for a number of years, and that person, if she's a model for the rest of the district, is worth double this amount of money. Saved a lot of kids, kept a lot of kids in school. Very valuable part of our team.
Thank you. Director Zamora?
Well, and I can describe it for you from the other side, from the juvenile court services side. It's very helpful for those of us who are working with juveniles in the system to have a liaison we can go to find out what's happening at school, to tell the liaison what we think is needed that isn't happening, that they need to be doing. So from both sides, it's a very useful activity.
Great. Thank you. Any additional discussion? Director Kluhl.
I just have a math question. In the amendment itself, paragraph 1B, sub 1, it talks about these program costs are allocated as follows. 1, 50% or $141,586 paid by the department. 2, 50% or $183,045 paid by the district. Now, 50% should be 50%, but in this case it doesn't appear to be. So I had a question about that.
The 50% is on the salary portion. The benefits portion is equal with exception of the family insurance, whereby the district will be picking up family insurance and paying for half of single coverage while juvenile court pays for half of single coverage. That's the proposal, and part of it is based on their budget as well in terms of how many dollars they have to give to the arrangement. And so this is the agreement that wages would be split 50-50, but benefits there would be a slightly more paid by the district, especially in the area of family insurance, as not all of the juvenile court persons carry family insurance.
So if you had the entire 2080 agreement in front of you, you'd be able to understand that more readily.
Probably.
It might be better just to leave the 50% out and just show the portion.
It would decrease the number of people asking questions. About
Okay. I can't argue that point.
Director Kluhl, you want to make an amendment to the motion to that effect?
Well, I would make a motion to amend to change the fifth amendment to the 2080 agreement for the school-based supervision program to eliminate the verbiage in paragraph 1 sub A, 1 sub B, sub 1 and 2 to say, to eliminate the 50% number and just to put the total amounts to be paid by the department and the amount to be paid by the district.
Yep. So you're recommending striking the 50% or on both 1 and 2?
Exactly.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion to amend?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? On the motion to amend, I'm sorry. We'll call for the vote. Director Kluhl, and this is just on the amendment. Okay. Director Sherwood?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
Yes.
Director Zamora?
Yes.
Director Crumwitty?
Yes.
Director Robertson?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Is there any additional discussion on the original motion? If not, we'll call for the vote. Director Zamora?
Yes.
Director Sherwood?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Crumwitty?
Yes.
Director Robertson?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of boundaries?
Mr. President,
Director Crumwitty.
I move the administration's recommendation that the board approve the revised administrative regulation 501.12A, which delineates the revised school boundaries for all elementary, intermediate, and high schools in the Davenport Community School District.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Director DeFau.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the boundary recommendation.
Okay.
Okay. So I move the boundary recommendations presented by the superintendent be redefined as transportation zones for each reference school building, and that the board affirm open enrollment for all students residing within the Davenport Community School District. Parents may choose to enroll their student in a building contingent upon available classroom space. If the child resides within the transportation zone previously referred to as school boundary and lives outside the building walk zone, the student will have access to transportation with existing fee structures to remain in place. However, if the family resides outside the defined transportation zone, the parent is responsible for providing the student's transportation to the school of choice. The superintendent will be responsible to determine A to B ratios for each building to ensure compliance with the diversity plan and take measures to ensure that sufficient space is reserved for students moving within the curricular year. This plan will take effect with the 2014-15 school year. Until that time, all transfer requests will be processed in accordance with current district practice.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Is there a discussion?
Mr. President,
Director DeFau.
I believe that there's been significant opinion expressed, not only at this board table, but within the community, that the board should give serious consideration to allowing all students, not just high school students, to open enroll within the district. Given that I think that it is a more equitable way to allow students and families to make choices, I've brought this recommendation forward for consideration. I do believe that it addresses the concerns that were raised at the last meeting in reference to transportation and ensuring that there would be opportunity for students to move during the curricular year.
Is there any additional discussion?
Mr. President,
Director Zamora.
I think it would be an administrative nightmare. I don't think you would have any way of determining who was going to be where. I think that some of our schools would become overcrowded, which was our very purpose in making boundary changes anyway, and others would become skeletal because of perceived notions and the people's misunderstanding that education in all of our buildings is the same from building to building.
Any additional discussion? Director Robertson.
One of the greatest gifts that a parent can give his or her kid is a great education. And I have had this point of view all along that I think one should be able to choose under school. If I go back and look at when we had schools that are in need of assistance, it wasn't a mass leaving of the schools. There were some that left. Most stayed because that's the school that they wanted to attend. That last young lady that was in here, and she talked about, you know, what was in the best interest of her kids. And I always think about that, what is in the best interest? And I think parents should always have the last say when you go to talking about how their kids are going to be educated. Because in the end, what happens from the time that you walk in the door until the time that you leave, believe me, will dictate most of the things that are going to happen to you in the future years. So if the perception is that it would be best for my kid to go to school X, then I think there ought to be some rationale given and taking a look at that. I understand that if there is no room available, then that's fine. But if there's a possibility, then I think that we should give parents that opportunity. And I've never sat here at this board and think that I have a better understanding of what is in the best interest of your children, more so than you. I always listen to what you have to say, and then I try to apply that to the policies that we have. So, thank you.
Any additional discussion?
Mr. President?
Director Cluel.
Back in 2006, when we approved the previous policy on boundaries, at that time, we decided that we would allow open enrollment to our high schools at that time. And we, the board, were pretty much set up until the time of the vote, until we did some focus forums to restrict enrollment to the high schools. Because what we wanted to do was we wanted to maximize efficiency to each of those high schools. The way to do that is to draw tight boundaries around them so that you know exactly the population that you have that's going to a given school. We listened to the public, and the public said, we don't want that. We want to have open enrollment at the high school level. The board rethought that and did 180 degrees and went with it, and I think it has been very successful. I think most people in the community that I've heard of appreciate very much the opportunity to be able to choose, as Director Robertson has indicated. At that time, you know, I stated that I thought that perhaps we should move to open enroll for all of our students, elementary, middle, high school. Because I thought, like Director Robertson, I think, you know, and Director DeFau, that this would be an opportunity for parents to choose those schools where they thought their children could get the best education. I've rethought that, and if you've been listening in the last couple of weeks, you've kind of evolved along with me in terms of my thought process, because as I thought through that, I said, well, I strongly support community schools. I strongly support choice, but I believe that elementary schools are so vital in terms of our community glue, our community attachment. I have been to schools, for instance, where Grant School, which is now closed, but being in that school and being up on the second floor talking to parents and being told that when this person, now an adult, was a child, there were cornfields all around that school, but that community grew up around it. So I believe that elementary schools are vital centers of our community. And I'm very concerned about what happens with elementary schools if we say you're free to choose, because we have some schools that at this point are not attractive to a lot of parents. And what I see happening is I see a mass exodus from those schools. And while I support every one of those children who's able to go to a better school, that school that is left with not enough children in it to make it work is going to hurt our community terribly. And I see the end result being closed schools. And we can't allow that to happen. What we as a board have to do is we have to make sure that all of our schools are the kinds of schools that every parent wants to send their children to, and we're working on that. And I think we're making good strides. But I think to open enroll at the elementary level would be a dysfunction to our community.
Is there any additional discussion? Director Cromwell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. If I recall, the reason we got into this discussion with boundaries in the first place has to do with the elementary schools and the overcrowding of elementary schools. We have people at this board table who very strongly feel that neighborhood schools are very important in the neighborhoods that we live in. People build their houses there. People move into those areas. If we would go to this open enrollment concept at the elementary level, I agree with Director Zamora, we would have an administrative nightmare. I've been there. I've had to deal with people coming in from other areas. It is an administrative nightmare. So if we would do that district-wide, I think I just would have some real issues with seeing how that would all work out, because we are going to have elementary schools who are going to be overcrowded, and people who move into those neighborhoods and live right across the street then are going to be told, just like they are now, sorry folks, you have to go to another elementary school. You can't go to your neighborhood school. That's what's going to happen in this district. If we would open the elementaries up, I think that's where the overcrowding, not think, I know where that's where the overcrowding is. High schools, I've said it many times, different story. High school students figure out a way to get transportation to the high schools, and that's not a huge issue. Transportation is going to be a huge issue for elementary students getting to and from school, high school students. My own children, when they went to Central, they figured out a way. Their friends or their friends' parents would get them there. But if we open up elementaries that way, I can't imagine all these kids going all over this district. So I agree with Director Zamora. I agree with Director Kluhl. It would be one of the worst things I think we could do in this district to open that up district-wide.
Any additional discussion, Director DeFau?
There's nothing in this proposal that suggests that enrollments wouldn't be established and maintained for buildings as they are now. Yeah, 4-section buildings would remain 4-section buildings and 3-section, et cetera. There is a provision so that there is a certain amount of space that's retained for students that would move into that transportation/boundaried area so that they could enroll in that school if they chose to. And in regard to the transportation, it would be very parallel to what it is now. If you choose to enroll outside of your transportation boundaried area, and you would then be required to provide your own transportation. If you live within the transportation zone but outside the walk zone, you would be afforded transportation as you are now.
Are you done with? Okay. Excuse me a second. Director Sherwood, did you have something? Okay. Director Crumwoody?
I'm not sure how you would leave space. So are we going to say that, okay, 25% of the building would be left open, so just in case somebody moved in, or would it be 10%? I'm not sure how that would work out. So again, I think you're going to have an issue with people moving in and out, and we do have a lot of that going on in this district. So I think it would be very, very difficult to control that. The other thing, I've always been a strong believer in strong neighborhood elementary schools. And I also think by doing this sort of thing, we would be dividing that neighborhood. We wouldn't have strong parent support because some of those parents are going to be off in the other part of town going to school, and some would be in their neighborhood school. I've always been a strong believer in parent organizations and PTAs and so forth, and I think that would hamper some of that community effect in a neighborhood school if we allow people to go all over the district.
Director Robertson?
The one thing about I don't like about serving on this board all of these years is that in the past we've always had great respect for people's opinion, and it wasn't trying to discourage others' opinion. When Mr. Kluhl had an opinion that was different from mine, I respected that. So I would hope that going forward, that when people have opinion, it's not personal. It's how they see things with the people that they come in contact with. I come in contact with more people like that young lady that was here talking about what was in the best interest of her kids. Other people might come in contact with people that says that the best thing for me to do is walk across the street. And I support all of that. I was a big supporter when the Harrison people came because I think that they should have a say in what they're going to do. But I also believe that other people should have a say so in how they are going to go about educating their kids. And when we talk about all of these organizations that we had, I was very active in my kids' education growing up. Never went to a PTA meeting. I worked days, and the PTA association was what? During the day. So it wasn't about all of these organizations. It was about showing up, you know, when there were things that were going on to make sure that all the volunteerism that was needed was there. So even though we have difference of opinion, Director Kluge, I've been around you a lot longer than most, is that I've enjoyed it. You know, the point that we can be different, but it's not personal, and we vote and we move on, you know, with that. So thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Director Kluge.
Well, that's just too good a teaching moment to pass up on. I just appreciate that, and all the, because we do have an advocacy committee here in the school district, and we're proud of it. We're doing some good things, but it's about listening to people. And all of you folks, and I know there are a number of you here who have spoken at this podium up here, and don't think that anything you said up there is not taken internally and thought about. But in the end, the decisions that the 7 board members make are the best informed decisions that they can make. It's based on what we've heard, but inside of each of us and inside of every one of us, there is a value set that we use to filter and determine what the best decision is. So I just appreciate the words that Director Robertson has said, and I think that some folks have contacted me and said, "Why do you want to be on the school board? It's just angst and anger," and but it's thinking through very important things and sharing thoughts and ideas and being flexible and changing our opinions when the time comes, when it's time. So I won't go on, but I'm just very appreciative of Director Robertson's comments about how this board makes its decisions.
Thank you. Director Sherwood.
Yeah, and the idea of choice is always very appealing to folks, but the reality is in these situations that the people that exercise the choice are people who have transportation available to them. They're people who have parents who are insightful and motivated enough to exercise that choice. And so what tends to happen is that schools, for good reasons and bad, get abandoned. Their problems concentrate. You have more and more problems to deal with. And unless you do these kinds of things with boundaries where you intermix income levels and things, having a wide open free-for-all for who gets in what buildings is a way to make sure that there are going to be perpetual disenfranchisement in some buildings. And so my view is the task of this board is to make sure that every building is a building of choice, that people want to be there, and that the best way to do that is to focus on all the buildings and not to handicap them by having some of their best kids leave. So I will be voting against this.
Any additional discussion? Director DeFau.
Just want to clarify something that I think I heard Director Crumwoody say, which is choice erodes the school's sense of community. And I'm not quite certain how any or several of the comments that I've heard are congruent with the vote that we had at the last meeting. And that's really all I have to say.
Any additional discussion? I'm going to have to weigh in on this. There's been so much said here, I don't even know if I can address it all, but I do have to say that I'm going to just address these as I've taken notes. The issue of administration or administrative nightmare, in the research that I have done where this does exist in certain areas and notably in Florida, I didn't have a chance to research all the rest of the states, and I don't know exactly why I picked Florida, but I did. Turns out that, as far as I can tell, they have that type of open enrollment within the district statewide, and some of the particular districts we're talking about it. I have confidence in our administration and in the ability to handle something like this. One of the things that has been discussed here during our discussion is the idea of change, and there are always changes taking place. One of the things that happens during some of our discussions is that board members advocate thinking big. This, to me, is one of those types of ideas that would be conceivably a big idea. The original idea to open the choice up to high schools, I think, was kind of a big idea. It was really different, I have to say, during that discussion, and how it changed the way Director Kluhl recounted earlier. A couple of comments tonight have alluded to the importance of a school. One of the descriptions was make all buildings or all schools a building of choice. Another was to have strong neighborhood schools. And another was that we have to have, every school has to be important. And as I think about this, I think that every student is more important than every school. And I think that student achievement is more important than making sure that a building is, what I should say, I need to say that I believe that student achievement is more important and that the board should be more dedicated to the student achievement than it is to trying to make sure that every building is equal. I think that trying to make sure that every student has the opportunity is correct, but to try to say that every building is equal, I think is not quite correct. When it comes to the issues of diversity, I believe that the diversity plan, which has already been approved, would continue to be used no matter what kind of approach that we take, and that it would continue to reduce isolation. With respect to parents and transportation, one of the things that I've considered as I think about the idea of choice, and I think about the idea of choice at the high school, and I believe that the same exact conditions exist, and that there are students that even though the conditions exist that the student can go to any high school, there may be a student in a particular area of one of the high schools that happens to be low SES, and they may not have that opportunity. They may not have the transportation, whatever it is. And so when I think of choice at the high school, and I think of the principle of choice, and I think of the parents of students that are in elementary and intermediate, I believe that that is the correct way to go. And even if it doesn't happen now, I believe that in the future, this district will end up having choice at all levels. Is there any additional discussion? Director Sherwood.
Yeah, a couple things. I'm not sure what Director Zamora meant when she talked about the equality of these schools. I would hate to see the day that all of our schools were in lockstep and exactly the same. That would deny the individual buildings to have their own culture, to have their own vision for how they should treat their kids. And so I hope that no one's talking about some kind of a factory farm that we're doing that. So that's one point. The other point is when kids get to be high school, they can begin to act in their own stead. In ways that they cannot do as elementary kids. And as an example of that, I spent my sophomore year of high school hitchhiking back and forth 20 miles to a high school because they built a high school closer to us, but I wanted to continue with the program at the high school I was in, so I hitchhiked back and forth for that entire year. I was a poor kid, no transportation, but I made do. Kids at the high school level can be more flexible. They have friends with cars. They have lots of things. Not true at the elementary level. So I think that poverty impacts kids much more severely at the elementary level than it does at the high school level.
Director Zamora.
Sure. What I meant was that our curriculum is the same and the quality of our staff is the same. Of course, each school has its own character. And I don't think kids ought to be hitchhiking today.
No, they shouldn't. I probably shouldn't have been doing it.
Any additional discussion? One thing I failed to bring was some of the research that I had, but frankly, in the Iowa Code and in the department regulations, when they recognize open enrollment, the discussion in there really talks about choice, and it talks about the parents' right to choose, and that's part of the whole philosophy behind what the legislature did when it said that open enrollment exists. And in our state, open enrollment exists at all levels. It doesn't exist just at the high school level. The legislature has identified that choice is important at all levels, and the Department of Education has identified that as well. And although I don't always support either of those organizations, in this particular case, I do. Any other discussion? Director Sherwood.
Just a final point for me, I hope it's a final point. Well, I think that's a great example. We have open enrollment between districts, and this board has acted recently to curtail that in every way that we can, because we see that in all likelihood, if we did really had open enrollment, that we'd have a large outflow of a number of folks based on poor knowledge and ignorance, as far as I'm concerned, but we'd see that. And so we move in ways to curb that. So if it's such a great thing, I'm not sure why we've done some of the things we have recently.
Any additional discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote on the amendment, and this amendment is the amendment that Director DeFau presented regarding approval of boundaries, and I'm not going to recount it. But the essence of this amendment, the way that I understand it, with a lot of provisions, would be to allow open enrollment at all levels, including elementary, intermediate, and high school. Is that sufficient to kind of capture what the amendment is? I think we all know. Okay. We'll call for the vote. Director DeFau.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
No.
Director Zamora.
No.
Director Sherwood.
No.
Director Cromedy.
No.
My vote is yes. The motion fails. The amendment fails. We're back on the original motion, which is the approval of boundaries. Is there any additional discussion? Director DeFau.
In reference to the undeveloped area that is north of the Harrison boundary as proposed, I think that it would behoove us to consider assigning that undeveloped area to Fillmore School. The reason for that is that we well know that Harrison cannot accommodate the growth that we will experience in that undeveloped area. And by not doing so, we are going to continue to perpetuate the sentiment that exists currently that if I have a home in that area, then I rightfully should be allowed to enroll at Harrison. By some of the members of that community that came and spoke to us, in fact, asked us preserve the existing boundary, but reassign the undeveloped area so that those families would know prior to building that they would be assigned to Fillmore School. Not doing so, again, I think perpetuates the same challenge that we're facing today. And yes, we could add a floor to Harrison and make it a 1,000-student school, but I don't know that that's in the educational best interest of our students, nor do I believe that that's a practice that's been supported by this board. And even, erecting temporary classrooms as were done there in the past only puts a Band-Aid on this situation.
Do you have a recommendation for a street that we would use?
I would say any of the area that's undeveloped north of the northernmost boundary of Harrison, whatever that is. I don't think there are streets there yet.
It's already assigned to Fillmore, isn't it?
That's
I
what I'm
don't
saying.
know.
That's what I'm wondering.
It's already there.
I'm asking that to make sure that that's clearly the case.
The Harrison description does go on a line from, once you come up 59th to Western, and then you go southwest on Western to Goose Creek, and you follow Goose Creek up until it meets an access to 64th Street. So, and then it meets 64th Street on Division Street. So that line is there. It would just need to be, as those streets fall in, we said to make sure 64th is that line now.
Okay, well, I want to make sure that that's clearly known.
Yeah. The groups that spoke to us did mention anything beyond 63rd, and I believe that's addressed as long as it meets 64th all the way over. We did not touch even the corner that was over on Division that still went to Harrison. So we just left that boundary as it was. But I think it's covered. We'll just have to make sure that as future developments go, both sides of 64th Street would go to Fillmore.
Okay, thanks.
Any addition, Director Robertson?
In that section that Director DeFile referred to, in future years, those cornfields are already for sale. Harrison North Fillmore will accommodate the families that are probably going to move into those subdivisions. When I see people that move in now, the one thing that they all have in common, they have kids. And so I've asked for this many, many times, and I think that we have to say, what are we going to do out there? Because Fillmore, I don't see where you have a lot of room left in Fillmore, to accommodate the new area that's going to be developed out there. It is going to be developed. They consistently build a house, and they sell it very quickly, and they build another house, and they sell it very quickly, and the cornfields, all of that area eventually will be housing with people that basically are looking to go to school in Davenport Community School District. And if we don't start to plan to do something now, we're going to be in even more trouble when that happens, because we will not have the space. Which school you decide you want to go to, you still won't have the space.
Any additional discussion? One of the things I want to talk about just briefly, because this is an administrative regulation. It's not a policy. And so it technically is kind of, it's a little bit different than the way we normally handle things. It is the way that we have handled this particular administrative regulation in the past, is that it's, since the responsibility and the authority for establishing the boundaries exists with the board and not with the administration. And yet we don't really have a policy that encompasses all of this. And so this is being established as an administrative regulation, but it is within the authority technically of the board through the policy that gives the board the authority. I just wanted to point it out because it's an issue that I wrestled with last week as we were trying to establish the agenda. Couldn't really come up with a better way, but I wanted the board to be aware of that. If there's no additional discussion, or is there? Director Kluhl?
So we're talking about administrative regulation 501.12B?
501.12A.
Okay.
We're still on the approval of boundaries.
Okay. I have some comments on 501.12 boundary lines. This be appropriate to discuss
Yes.
that?
Yep.
It says that the superintendent will review boundaries annually and make recommendations to the board as needed. And that's probably okay. I don't know that we need to say annually, but I think that the superintendent needs to keep track of what's going on with demographics and be prepared to make comments and recommendations to the board as needed. But I certainly don't want the public to think that this kind of issue is going to come up every year. So I don't offer any amendment on that because I think administration understands that, certainly. But what I would like to hear some comments from the board on is a suggested change. The second sentence in the second paragraph says, in making the recommendation, the superintendent will consider the geographical layout of the district, the condition and location of the district facilities, and I would suggest adding the current and projected location of student populations.
Well, excuse me, here, I allowed you to talk about 501.12 with respect to the 501.12A. I apologize, but I don't think that it would be appropriate to make recommendations to the change in the policy because the policy itself isn't up for discussion.
Okay, another time then.
Yeah, another time. Yep. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. And this is on the approval of boundaries, which is item C, which is recommending that the approval of the revised administrative regulation 501.12A, which is encompassed primarily in this set of documents, and it's really not the maps, it is the street portions of this document that you have. We'll call for the vote. Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Zamora.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
No.
Director DeFau.
No.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of grandfather clauses?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendations on Administrative Regulation 501.12B, which lists the sequence of implementing the boundary change previously approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
President Johansson,
Director DeFau.
I'd like to move to amend the motion to omit the language relevant to the siblings of transfer students.
Is there a second to the motion to amend?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and I'm having difficulty finding that piece of paper. Oh, excuse me. Okay, you recommended eliminating it,
Correct.
and, okay, is there any discussion?
Well, I would say that I believe that separating the students, as was referenced in the open enrollment or the open forum this evening, as one example, is detrimental to families' abilities to be supportive of their elementary schools. Director Crumwitty spoke about the fact of family involvement and wanting to create an atmosphere where parents are encouraged to be supportive of their students' buildings. And in the case of the woman that spoke to us, and in my own case, when I had younger children and had a grandfathering situation, I would have had two separate elementary schools at which my children were enrolled, which would have required me to split my time or try and manage that time to support both buildings. So I think it's in the family's best interest to be able to maintain the continuity of their students' educational environment until the time that those students would matriculate to the next grade, elementary to intermediate, intermediate to high school.
Excuse me, I just have to do something administratively here. All right, is there any additional discussion on the amendment? Director Sherwood.
I'd like to ask Dr. Tate what he thinks the impact of this would have on your ability to get these numbers back in balance.
Well, any of the grandfathering we do is just going to take a little bit longer to get us where we'd like to be with our boundaries. The thought process with the sibling of transfer students is that transferring is an option that you make. You decide you'd like to have your children go to another school, your child, and that at one point you're probably going to have to make a decision on which school you'd like the siblings to go to, so you could always bring your child back to the home school to do it.
Now, it's true that since we're now enforcing boundaries, in the past we haven't, there will no longer be voluntary enrollment in schools outside of your own district. Is that correct?
Except for certain reasons, but
Except for certain reasons.
this means people that transferred in the past
Right.
and they're there now. And so what this indicates that even though you've transferred into a school, then when your sibling is of age, they would not be able to go to that school.
I understand. And I have some sympathy for Director DeFoss' position on this. I'm just wondering about the impact of this. Do we have any idea how many kids we're talking about, that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, I don't. It'd be very hard to tell.
Okay.
Additional discussion, Director Robertson.
Again, I'm always about choice, and I'm not about splitting families up where one go to one school and one go to another school. So if we're going to have that, then I'm opposed.
Any additional discussion? My thinking on this is that we've allowed the choice in the past for whatever reasons, but that's what has happened. And my thinking is that those families would have had that expectation to allow their siblings to go, and I think we probably would have been conveying that expectation as well all along. And so anticipating that this is simply slowing down the process a little bit by allowing siblings, it seems like a reasonable approach to me. If there's no additional discussion, we'll call for the vote on the amendment to strike the whole section, which is siblings of transfer students. Director DeFow.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director Cromody.
Yes.
Director Kluel.
Yes.
Director Zamora.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. So that section will be struck from the original motion, which of the Administrative Regulation 501.12B. Is there any additional discussion on the motion to approve the grandfather clauses? Director DeFow.
I know that there were a group of individuals who were interested in transferring their student to an elementary or intermediate school following our past practice, that had submitted applications to do so, that were told that their applications would be pending based upon the discussion and the decision at the board table. I also know that, I don't know. My question is, for those families, because of the point in time we're at now, if they were kindergarten students enrolling in an elementary, were they allowed to participate in kindergarten roundup in the school they wanted to choose, or were they, did they participate in kindergarten roundup at the school they would have attended, or in the attendance center in which they reside? Same for sixth grade students, because if they have participated in enrollment activities at the building they would have chosen as opposed to the building they live in, the attendance center, I'm wondering if we should in fact honor those requests this year only because of the late date. Dr. O, I mean, I know that a lot of those came to you.
Well, for kindergarten, what we say in here, if you have registered in kindergarten, wherever you registered, you will attend that school and you'll be grandfathered into that school.
Okay, so my question then, okay, I live in Adams District. I wanted my child to attend Harrison. I participated in kindergarten roundup at Harrison, but now we're saying we're locking the boundaries, and I live in the Adams District. Am I still going to be allowed to send my child to Harrison, or am I going to now be told you have to attend?
No, you can
Adams.
attend Harrison.
So,
And when people asked, should they be looking at boundaries when they register, we said no. Register in the school where you would want to attend school. So anyone who's registered will attend that school. Now, 6th grade, we didn't think about.
okay, so, the same situation would exist. I live in Williams District. I wanted to attend Wood.
But
I
they
went
shouldn't
to
have registered unless they got transfers approved. We've held all the transfers out until we got the attendance center policy. And I will look at each of those transfers based and see if there's any validity on the exceptions. So if someone should be going to Williams, wanted to go to Wood, and they put in a transfer, I will look to see if they qualify for one of the exceptions. If not, it'll be disapproved under this current grandfathering.
Even at this late juncture. That's my only question about this year. This is a transition year. We, for a variety of reasons, have not arrived at a decision until tonight, well in arrears of when I think we should have reached a decision, and well in arrears of our goal. I think we all anticipated resolving this sooner. Again, I'm just wondering about those specific families, the fact that they were already making plans and decisions for their student, and whether or not for this year only we should afford them that discretion.
Director Zamora.
Yes, it's my opinion that if we don't stop making exceptions and this and that and the other thing, we've wasted all of our time and we're getting nowhere. As it is, it's going to take years to implement this, and before it gets implemented, there'll be time for us to look at it again. So I think we ought to sort of get on with it.
Director Cromartie.
I need some clarification about participating in kindergarten enrollment and registration. And if I understand right, we haven't registered yet. We have had kindergarten roundup, which is a lot different than registering your child in a school. If registration, and Bill or Dr. O, help me out, when does registration take place in our schools?
I actually don't think that's going to be an issue because all kindergarten age students were sent back to their home schools to attend roundup. So the scenario that you played out, that mother or that family would have been told to go back to the other school and attend their roundup, and when the decision is made, then the transfer might happen. But at this point, no one should have attended where they want to go, but they were told to go back to their home school to go to the actual roundup event. And they don't put them on their rosters until after all of the kids that live in that neighborhood are enrolled anyway. So,
And when does that registration take place, Bill?
well, now they're actually can start registering now, but they wouldn't be registering kids outside of their home schools yet. They wait to see if all the kids that live in that area get in there first, if that helps.
Yeah, that's a clarification that I'm looking for.
Any additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote, which is on the approval of grandfather clauses. This is Administrative Regulation 501.12B. Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Zamora.
Yes, but I presume this includes our amendment, which deleted the last two sentences.
Yes, I appreciate you clarifying that. That is exactly correct. The amendment, well, it struck the last section, which is siblings of transfer students. And Director Kluhl, you were aware of that when you voted. Okay, thank you. Director Cromartie.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director DeFow.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding new building usage fees?
Mr. President,
Director Zamora.
I recommend that we approve the fee schedule for the use of building facilities effective July 1st, 2013, as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. Director Zamora.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director DeFau.
Yes.
Director Kluel.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding new early childhood tuition fees?
Mr. President,
Director Sherwood.
I move that the board adopt the the administration's recommendation for tuition and RAP fees for the Children's Village for the 2013-14 school year as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Robertson.
Yeah, the children's villages are dear to my heart. And the one thing that I want to know is what impact will this have on kids that previously were enrolled, and will they be excluded in the future because of their lack of funds?
Good evening. It is about, for infants, it's a $12 increase. For 2-year-olds, it's $12.50 a week. And for your 3-year-olds, it's $10.50. And you'll see for your 4-year-olds, because of that 4-year-old grant piece, their amount is actually going down what they're paying per week. I would like to note that we have several grants that help families. We have the wraparound grant that will help them if they are a Title family, Head Start family, special education family, or Shared Visions family. They could qualify on their income and whether or not they're going to school full-time, and that could pay for their wraparound piece. We also partner with Scott County Kids, and they have a tuition piece that will help pay for some of that preschool, not the child care, but the preschool piece if they qualify for that. We also accept Department of Human Services reimbursement dollars.
Do you anticipate having less kids enrolled in children's villages in the fall than you've had the previous years?
It will look different. We'll have similar numbers, but it may not be all 6-hour full-day programs. There are some half-day programs that will also be offered.
Also, in the past, you've had where kids went there, what I considered year-round. Is that changing where there won't be a summer program, or it will end, say, in June, and then there will be that time frame where there won't be any school, for them?
In order to problem solve for that piece, we have initiated a summer enrichment program. It is located at Children's Village West. It will begin this year on July 1st. All families are required to pay some portion of that piece, and it varies on their income level, so it varies on their ability to pay. It is open at Children's Village West for all of our sites. At this point, I believe we have an infant classroom that will be full, a toddler classroom that will be close to full, and a 2-year-old room that will be full. We have 4 3-year-old classrooms, and our numbers are fluctuating, 3 to 4 4-year-old classrooms, and then we'll also offer the extended school year services for children with special education needs the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th week of July. So the parents kind of have a plethora of choices for the summer. And it will also have that AM wrap piece if they require, and the after-school wrap piece too.
Well, the reason why I ask these questions is because the villages are special. I think they are a difference maker going forward. So the question I have is that in the fall, will we serve the same numbers and with the same efficiency that we have done in the past?
We will serve a very similar number, and we're also looking at opening, we have some new partners coming on where we will be opening new 4-year-old programs. One of them is at Red Rover, so one of our teachers from Davenport Community School District will be entering the Red Rover site, so that would be an additional 20 children. We have the CASA program, which is going to be located at Marquette Academy, and that could be an additional 20 to possibly 40 new students. We're also opening a new classroom at Lincoln, and we are planning to partner with Head Start. That could be another 20 to 40 students. I think that we're going to be able to reach the same or maybe even more students, but the programming options will look different.
Thank you, and continued success, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion? Director Sherwood.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on talking about this tonight. And now that thing at St. Joe's, is that Casa Guanajuato? Is that who you're partnering with?
Yes.
Okay. And is that going to be a bilingual program?
We're working very closely with them on that piece, and they will help us with that piece. So it will be the bilingual, and we're also looking at that parent involvement piece, so that we're working with United Way on that grant that they have, so that we could possibly write in for that 2 hours or whatever they needed following the 2 hours for wraparound, so that the parents would also have opportunities to come in and get what they need from that site. So we are looking at a very unique program that would encompass the entire family.
That's very cool. Yeah, thank you.
If there's no additional discussion, we'll call for the vote. Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Zamora.
Yes.
Director Crumwity.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director DeFow.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding revenue purpose statement?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation on the following resolution on revenue purposes statement and ordering an election on a revenue purpose statement to authorize expenditures from the State Secure and Advanced Vision for Education Fund, that is, the revenues. And I presume we need to read this entirely into the record. So those of you with small children out there who want them to go to sleep, have them pay attention very closely to what I'm about to say. They'll be asleep by the end. Whereas the school district receives school infrastructure local option tax revenues, that is SILO dollars, which has been replaced by 1-cent state sales services and use tax revenues, which must be deposited in the State Secure and Advanced Vision for Education Fund and distributed to the school district pursuant to Iowa Code 423E.4 as amended. And whereas Iowa Code Section 277.4 requires each school district to approve and submit a revenue purpose statement to the County Commissioner of Elections no later than 5 p.m. on the day after nomination papers are due for school board candidate elections, listing the specific purpose or purposes for which the state sales, services, and use tax for school infrastructure revenues and appropriations and other monies received from the State Secure and Advanced Vision Education Fund pursuant to Iowa Code 423E.4 as amended will be expanded. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Davenport Community School District in the counties of Scott and Muscatine, State of Iowa, Section 1, of which there are 9, that the board wishes to authorize spending the revenues for other purposes and to replace and extend the existing authorization, and doing so must approve the following revenue purposes statement. Section 2, that the following revenue purpose statement shall be approved and the Secretary is authorized and directed to submit and file the revenues purpose statement with the Scott County Commissioner of Elections no later than 5 p.m. on the day after nomination papers are due for school board candidate.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
That's all that needs to be read into the record.
Very good.
The rest is explanation. Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? One thing I wanted to point out on the the sample ballot list Proposition A, and that has been modified. Right now it would be Proposition D, and that's after talking to the auditor. Is there any additional discussion? If not, we will call for the vote. Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Crumwity.
Yes.
Director Zamora.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director DeFow.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. We'll move into the discussion section, and We have a periodic update for Edison. Superintendent Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Laura, Brett, and Christy.
I'll let Laura get the PowerPoint, the traditional PowerPoint up. I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you all this evening. And so we're going to continue with the format that you've seen throughout the school year. We'll have Christy speak, Laura speak, and myself speak, and we'll focus on student achievement and hopefully answer some of the questions that have come up over the course of the year as well.
Good evening. We're here just to give an end-of-the-year report on our Jefferson Edison students and staff and faculty, whatever, just some pertinent information on how our school year went. So, of course, I've already talked about we started with a new vision and a mission statement, and we also had a school model this year to kind of give us a new direction there. I'm going to start with the current affairs. Laura Hayes will talk about the return on investment, and Brett will kind of wrap up the discussion on our data this year, and then any questions that we can answer. Student assessment. One of the big things was getting student portfolios. Since our students regroup for reading, it was important that we have each student have a portfolio that they take to class and record their data on. So data teams and data assessments was a big part of our initiative in our building this year. So students were able to track their DIBELS, their SRI, SMI, evaluate data along with IO assessment scores as well, and set some goals. Big kudos on Evaluate. Many of our students, and that's our benchmark assessment test that they take every month, a lot of our students were hitting 100%, and we did recognize students that did get 100% proficiency on those tests. They were very proud. Students start taking more ownership when we start doing the portfolios. They were very proud of the accomplishments they were making, and they were disappointed if they didn't hit their goal. They would let us know, even though we still try to encourage them and tell them that they were successful with the small gains that they made. Data achievement teams were big. Within our building, our staff has a house team meeting each day, and each day of the week it's assigned to myself or our literacy coach or Teresa, who did more stuff on the learning environment for our classrooms to be more successful. So each day, and Fridays was designated as lesson plan day. Each teacher also had a prep period due to the fact we had 5 specials this year, so students got to go to specials more often with PE, music, art, writing, and media. Within those data teams, we were able to really dig deep into the student data, provide plans to make more effective intervention periods for reading and math, which I felt really gave us a new direction for our students. We actually got to know our students better. How could our grade levels collaborate more, that we're able to let even our high achievers achieve higher, but also get those bubble students to go up to more than the average range, and then our students who are still below proficiency, how could we make gains with them? So those intervention periods in our house team meetings were very valuable. And up there, I'm not going to read everything, but those are some of the things that we did this year. With the Edison model, we had to do EFLT observations. So I'm in classrooms quite frequently, using those Edison observation sheets and giving some feedback to our staff members on where we need to grow and where we need to go, or what was successful. Because whatever was successful, we want to continue to use. And Laura Hayes will talk on return on the investment.
Thank you, Principal Pitts. Just again, good evening. My name is Laura Hayes, and I'm the Senior Director of Achievement for Edison. So I work to support Brett as Brett supports Principal Pitts. I'm going to talk to you just really quickly. I have 3 or 4 slides here. I'm going to breeze through them because I think you have this presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions, but I really want to leave the bulk of the time for Brett because Brett is going to talk about our achievement data, which is the meat of the presentation. But just some quick information on the return on your investment. You had 47 days on site from Brett as he worked with Principal Pitts. He conducted over 100 observations of math instruction, reading instruction, and specialists. He modeled the feedback process in the EFLT, which is our Edison Framework for Learning and Teaching. That's our observation cycle. He attended leadership meetings in support of the areas listed there, provided leadership support to the principal, and worked on goals for the school, and also directly conducted professional development sessions in leadership, differentiation, learning environment, math, and data analysis. You also had 6 days on site from our literacy specialist, also conducting observations, holding data meetings, holding professional development on higher order thinking skills, professional development on strategic reteaching, programmatic review of Wilson Learning for our well below struggling readers, support to the Kinder team as they began a new process in entering data in the member center, and our focus on literacy support visits, which was our focus this year, literacy. As we disaggregated the data, we saw that there was a great need in literacy, so we had a whole program around focusing on that, and there's a little bit more about that later. You also had 12 days on site from our math specialist. She worked directly with curriculum mapping, so she worked with the teachers at the beginning of the year to come up with a map for the whole year to align curriculum to make sure our teachers were teaching the same things, and then reviewing the grade level maps every quarter. She also worked on observations and feedback and shared that information with Principal Pitts to share directly with the teachers. She conducted data meetings with the teachers and disaggregated data in detail, and she also did professional development with the teachers and implemented a particular problem-solving technique because, again, as we disaggregated the data, we saw that problem-solving was one of our areas of need, so we implemented a school-wide problem-solving strategy. Some of the things in the Edison Learning Design that we worked on, a big piece was the school development rubric. And in the school development rubric, there are 52 areas that we look at, 52 areas of a highly successful school. And we give feedback to the school on each one of those areas. The school does a self-analysis at the beginning of the year. We look at all of those areas throughout the year, and then we hold them up at the end of the year to what they said. First of all, where they were at the beginning of the year, where they said they wanted to be, and how far did we come along that. So, and then from that, we build the school improvement plan. These are some excerpts from the school development rubric just to give you an idea of what it looks like. The school evaluates itself, and we give feedback in the 5 areas that we focus on in Edison. And the school identifies the areas that they feel they need the most work on, and we provide that support. So this is an excerpt from that document. And this is an excerpt from the document that I spoke of earlier, our focus on literacy. You'll see that all of the 5 lenses of literacy are represented here. And much like with the school development rubric at the beginning of the year, the school assesses itself. Where are we? Where would we like to be? And those letters that you see in there represent beginning, developing, or proficient. So in each of these areas, the school would have done an analysis, rated themselves on where they thought they were, and then we put a strategic plan together on how we were going to move on each of those areas, and then we come up with where we are at the end of the year, and we start the process. It's a continuous improvement process. We start the process all over again. And that information also feeds into the school development rubric. I'm going to turn it over to Brett now, and he's going to tell you, using all these tools and with the return on the investment and all the people we had on campus, how do we do?
The first thing that I just want to say is this really couldn't have been done without the teachers this year, and they and Ms. Pitts really poured their heart and soul into this school year, and it really is showing on the results. So that's really exciting. This, and I apologize for the colors. I'm going to make sure that I change those colors out the next time. So I'm glad you have the printed copy in front of you. This just goes back to what Ms. Pitts in the upper left-hand corner was looking at from our Evaluate system. And you can see just a few months ago, there was lots of red. This last report that she looked at, lots of yellow and some orange and some green. So again, what that's telling us from a quick just snapshot is we're moving. Our kids are moving. Some numbers that you can see here, and I have them circled out. This is the threshold number, and this is that information that we use as a predictor. And when you look at the beginning of the year, and that's the white bar there in the circle, the beginning of the year for math, for our in reading for our thresholds for our students, we were at 24%. By the end of the school year, we're saying that 57% of our students, if they took the Iowa assessment today, would pass. So, whether or not we hit that 57%, we're going to be pretty close. But again, this just shows the hard work that our teachers and our students really poured into this school year. In proficiency, this is really the number of questions that are answered correctly in grades 2 through 5 on the reading test every month. And again, you can see that at the beginning of the year, 42% of the questions were answered correctly. And by the end of the year, we were at 58%. And you can see over the course of the year, there were some ups and downs, but we did progressively move forward. So our reading data is telling us that our students are making gains. We look at the math, and here you can see that March significantly was our highest month. But again, we moved from the beginning of the year, that number was 38. To the end of the year, 57. And again, that's the number of students that we believe are going to be proficient on the Iowa assessment. Math, you can see that we went from 52 to 62. Again, March was a peak month. And this is the percentage or the number of questions that are answered, again, correctly. So overall, when we look at our Evaluate system, the data is telling us that our students are increasing. Our students are making gains. This slide actually goes back to one of the questions that's been asked consistently over the course of the year. And we worked with Dawn Anderson Rauscher with the district, and so we really appreciate her collaboration here. What this is telling us, and I have a few notes, when you look at grade 6, okay, grade 6 there, and grade 9 is the 2012 school year. So if you extrapolate this out, the students who were in grade 9 last spring, all right, these are the kids who will be graduating in the spring of 2015. They were also the students who were at Jefferson Edison in 5th grade in 2008. So you think about these group of students in 2008 at Jefferson Edison. What this is telling us is the darker blue line for students who were continuously enrolled for 3 years or more at Jefferson had a higher percentage on their Iowa, at that time it was the ITBS. In reading, again, it was 7.7. So you can see over the course of the next 4 years here, students who were with us in 2008 we're generally outperforming those students who were with us for less than 3 years. And again, Dawn Anderson Rauscher was able to provide us this data, so she looked at students across the district and ones who were at Jefferson Edison for 3+ years or 3 less years. So some successes for this school year. And again, I'm going to name our 4 kindergarten teachers because you watch a group of teachers work together, they're phenomenal. So it's Miss Paez, Miss Mayhew, Miss Leon, and of course Miss Mata. And you can see, and what's really frustrating here is that white, but in fall, 60% of our kindergartners were reading below grade level. In the spring, it was inverted, and 67% of them were on grade level. I think when you look at the Dibbles data, and we can take the below and flip it over to on grade level, our kindergarten teachers worked just magic here with our kids. You have to remember that we have a large percentage of ELL students as well. So when you look at our students who are on grade level, only 67 and only 9% are below. In first grade, and this is something that we're going to have to look at our data a little bit more carefully, and we will be doing that in the fall. But you can see that in first grade, our Dibbles data, it's about even. We had a few more in the bubble area. We went from 18 in the fall to 23 in the spring. We did decrease our below, but we're going to make sure that we really look at this data and look at what we need to do to support our second grade students next year with our second grade team. Fortunately, we have a very strong team in second grade as well. So here's the exciting news too. So when you look at our students, grades 3 through 5 on the Iowa assessment in a 2-year period, you can see in math, and again these are for 3-5 students, that we grew from 52.9 to 55.8% of our 3rd through 5th graders met or exceeded on the Iowa assessment. And when you look at reading, it's even a greater growth. Now we're not, again, we're going to keep going back, and we're not going to sit at 44%. We want to continue to grow. Our goal is, just like the district, 90% or above. But we were very excited when we saw this information. Again, what this does and what this is showing, it helps us determine where we really need to be putting our eggs, which basket, which group of kids do we need to be supporting. So when we look at our 2nd and our 4th graders for all student, now this is second through 5th grade, you can see here, so a little bit different numbers. We really need to be looking at our 3rd grade group next year and our 5th grade group. How are these students, what do we need to support these students? Fortunately, you can see that 3rd and 5th grade, we had some of the greatest growth this past school year. And I look at 5th grade, we have some phenomenal math teachers at 5th grade, including Mr. Van Spybrock, who in the last 2 years, if you want to look at a teacher's math scores, look at his math scores. His kids perform quite well. We look at our subgroups as well. We're very cognizant of all of our groups. And so we really focused again on our ELL students. You can see here that in 3rd grade, our students really performed quite well when we look at overall. And again, we look at that 4th grade group, and we know that that's where we're going to be focusing next year. In fact, our teachers have already started to identify specific kids and identify strategies that will work for them. Our African American population, so we look at 4th grade, that jumps out at us, but again, look at 5th grade. These are the kids who are going to be coming into your middle schools next year, the Davenport School middle schools. And hopefully they'll be right in with their peers. So some significant growth here with our African American subgroup as well. And then, of course, we finish with our kids and with our mission. And we're open to any questions.
Any questions from the board? Director Sherwood?
Do you have comparables to other schools with similar demographics in the district?
Sorry, boss told us not to do that, so I'm going to respect Dr. Tate and not go further on that until he wants to present it to you guys. Okay?
Okay.
So if Dr. Tate wants to comment on that, he can.
Apparently not.
No. We have a presentation coming. I didn't want them to give you a part of it when I was going to present the entire district. So that was the only reason.
I guess I would say this, my staff and my students worked extremely hard to perform well, and they've made some nice growth. It's not where we want to be at. We know where that was a milestone, so we celebrated that. We needed to celebrate the small milestone this year, and that's what we did.
Well,
And now we're ready to elevate it to the next level. So we're pleased with our growth, and I know we need to compare with the district and stuff, but we took an opportunity to celebrate Jefferson Edison and the staff and students this year. So
well said. And I appreciate the growth I'm seeing here. If it's sustained, is impressive. I don't expect, unbelievable transitions. Those are always I'm a little skeptical of, but good solid movement is always something that's healthy. Second question, I've been doing some reading in the persistence of the learning gaps, and apparently reading is the tougher nut to crack than math, and you seem to have kind of represented that your reading scores are lower than your math scores. Is that your impression as well?
yeah, it is. But we did make more gains in the reading than the math. The students are still not proficient. We were able, with Rachel's great help, to get a grant. So a lot of them are in summer school right now. And we'll be tracking those students throughout the school year as well. So kudos go out to Vanessa, Jasmine, and Tony, because they're the ones that went door to door and recruited, because we asked a lot of parents to sign their children up for this wonderful opportunity. And without them going door to door, we wouldn't make capacity for that summer school.
And what percentage of your kids are involved in that?
It's K2, and then we still had some room, so we did open it up to some third graders as well. So primary kids are there, and they're having a great time. So they are learning. They're getting some enrichment, much needed enrichment. It's just a half day. And then Fridays, of course, is their fun day. They get to go out into the community and experience some new things. I know they've been bowling, and I think they went skating. And a lot of our students have not done those things. So they're getting some awesome opportunities there.
Cool. Thank you.
Director Robertson.
Pitts, how many of your students coming into you have been exposed to preschool coming to you?
Not many. Like Brett's already gave kudos out to our kindergarten teachers groups, because 60% of our kids are below proficiency, and by the end of the year, 67% of them are on grade level now. So not many. I just had a parent in today registering, getting their kid ready for kindergarten, because I said, come on up, I'm in the building. And then she had a little one, and I recommended Children Village. Please get this one, sign up for Children Village. So we're going to promote more preschool at a registration time, because we really need those little ones to get some enrichment before they get to kindergarten with us. So, but I will say this, we've had quite a few ESL kids who came in with limited English. They are now my high flyers in kindergarten. So they are writing beautifully. If it's not spelled perfectly, it's sounded out perfectly. You can make out what they're writing. But they're some of my top-notch students now. So with early intervention and some early enrichment in the early childhood, we'll have those kids coming in starting day one, being top-notch, and then flying through. So quite a few of them got to go to reading because of their growth this year. So they were in the 90-minute reading block.
So starting off then, you have some kids that really, you have to start from ground zero to get them caught up to where some of the other kids are.
Yes.
And how does that affect their growth and development from, say, kindergarten through fourth, fifth, sixth grade in terms of their reading ability?
I think the real answer now is looking at primary scores, because really K first and second grade did a really nice job. And I'm not saying my third, fourth, and fifth grade did not, but we see some really solid scores in those areas. We need to figure out why is the trend kind of going downward in those upper grades? So that's the next step, is really to figure out how can we maintain what primary is doing. I'm not specifically sure if it's a piece of our curriculum or just something that we just need to add, but we need to figure out a way to make sure that we're steadily trending upward. Second grade on the evaluate, they were pretty much our leaders all year. They're the ones hitting 70% or above on the math evaluate benchmark scores. They were solidly in the 60% in the reading scores. Where third, fourth, and fifth grade were kind of all over the place. They hit some key points, like March for some reason stands out. But we know that just sitting in those data teams and really looking at the information, a lot of it is our students, one word can throw them off. So myself and the literacy coach with the grade level team, we're really looking at the problems that they are assessed on each month and really digging deep in what's tripping up our students. So, and a lot of it's the language piece. So we're working on that because it gets harder. So it's a big difference from second to third grade. It is a lot harder, but we really need to figure out how can we steadily keep that growth going on the upper grade side, because I know my teachers are putting in a lot of time and effort, so I know it's not that, and we've had a lot of training this year on being more fidelity within delivering our instruction. So we're headed in the right direction, so we just need to figure out those little bumps in the roads.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Director Cromwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, thank you for the presentation, and I should say presentations throughout the year. I appreciate this information. So we have a much better understanding of what's happening in Edison. I also appreciate all three of you taking time to invite we board members over to showing us exactly what's going on in the classrooms and to look at some of the data that you have on an ongoing basis. I appreciate that. One of the things when you were, Brett, when you were talking about the assessment data and you were comparing the class, you were talking about the class of 2015. One of the questions I've had at previous board meetings is, and maybe we're going to hear from Dr. Tate at a later date, but I still haven't heard about our intermediate students right now that have gone through Jefferson and how they compare to students in our district that have come from other elementary schools. And it was my understanding that we were going to get that information through Dawn. Will that be something that will be presented at the same time as the other information?
You know, Dawn did provide us two comparable schools, and I think it would be in everybody's best interest if we sat down with Dr. Tate and really talked about how we wanted to present that to the board, because we know that every school who is in this situation, every teacher, every administrator, they're working hard. And so we want to make sure, you know, as Christy said earlier, we want to be able to celebrate what we're doing at Jefferson, but I'd like to be able to work with, you know, Bill and Dr. Tate on how we want to best present that to the board, because Don did provide us two comparable schools. But so we do have that, so we'll work with.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any additional discussion?
I'll be short.
Director Kluhl.
I just, I've appreciated stopping over at the school and listening to the presentations that you've been giving periodically. One of the impressive things at school is aside from the numbers and Christy's geniality, is every time I've gone there, there's been a parent or a business group there in the building at work. And which brings me back to Director Robertson's thought. You have some connection with parents and people outside the school building. What is it that we as a community, as this district, as Scott County kids can do to try to be there in front of kindergarten when those kids walk in the door? Is it information, a lack of information, or is it something else with your, and as a principal, you know these students better than anybody. What is it that we need to do to get those kids ready for kindergarten? What can we do?
We probably need to go door to door. They respond to that. They might not like us approaching them, but at least we're coming with a good positive word. You know, maybe in the future, and I know part of the I'm sure someone would not like me saying this, but years ago, past principal, when the 1% sales tax came out, there was a phase, and one of the phases was to add a preschool wing to our building, and I think we'd be a wonderful site for a children's village if we can get an additional wing, because I'm packed. I don't have any extra room. Every classroom is being utilized right now. So, but I think we'd be a wonderful site, additional site, because a lot of our parents walk and kids walk to our building. So I think sometimes transportation holds them up, even though Putnam's not that far away. CASA might be a nice location, the Marquette Academy, because it's not that far away from Jefferson. But I think location is key. And then, word of mouth. I know we've been doing a lot more auto dialer information this year. That seems to get the words out on our family nights and stuff. We just did one for our Amen clothing closet, and we had people show up today for our clothing closet. So we know those auto dialer work. So I think that more personal type of message communication is best, but also we're just a community where people, they walk, because that definitely shows on our family nights. If it's if it's raining or snowing, they're not coming. If it's a nice night that they're able to walk and get to our family nights, we have a big turnout. So I think just, and I see a lot of parents coming in now, and if I see them with a little one, at least if I have a moment, I'm going to take that time to promote early childhood education. So, and that's worked with some of our families. So some of them just don't know those resources are out there. Some of it is transportation. But yeah, we just need to get out and publicize it a little bit more.
Well, one of the good things going for you is your neighbor there, United Neighbors. Are you able to work with them?
Actually, Friendly House is right up the street, and they usually get pretty full right away, and they do get some of our neighborhood kids. So once they reach capacity, it's kind of hard. Most of those kids end up being on a waiting list. So, hopefully in the future we can get our wish and get the extra wing, and maybe we become a preschool site. Just a little PR plug there.
I was just curious too, the March and April bump in achievement scores. Is that a national phenomena? Are kids looking forward to summer, or what? Why is that?
I do actually see that across the schools that I work with across the country. That's usually close to the time where they have their real state assessment. So the campuses are pushing it very hard. The teachers are pushing it very hard. And the students just tend to be more serious about it around the time of the real deal.
Interesting.
I think when you look at it too, there's less interruption, in March and April as well. You have some spring breaks, but there's a lot of instruction happening during those months.
Well, we should make it March and April all year long, shouldn't we?
And
Yeah.
any additional discussion? I've got an area of discussion. As I looked at your assessment results, and you gave all students and then a couple of subgroups, and as I thought about what you were trying to measure, and I thought, surely you have data from past years. I'm guessing. And if I were to look at this data, that fourth grade, it just strikes me that there's something going on there. And by looking at either cohort data from past years or all data, I think there would have to be some sort of conclusions made on why that's occurring. Is it because of the cohorts? Is it because of the grade? And I was just wondering if you've looked at that and if you could comment on that area.
Okay.
It's a great question. As I was looking at this data and putting it together, I did stay away from cohorts. Last year when we were looking at the data and again, knowing that the Iowa assessment was a new test, was a new assessment, really one of the things that we learned from the district, from Don Anderson-Rauscher, as we were talking, is not to compare the current assessment to the ITBS. So if we look at our evaluate data and we start looking at cohorts, that's absolutely where we're going to be going this next school year. We have not looked at cohorts specifically over the course of the last 2 years. We've really focused on instruction, fidelity to the program, and really focusing on teaching everyday math and teaching Success for All reading.
Okay, well, and I think this next year is really the last year that you're going to have to make some of those comparisons, and unless we go ahead and continue with the contract. And so for me it would be interesting. I would sure want to do everything I could to demonstrate whatever improvement I could demonstrate, even if the data wasn't exactly comparable.
And we absolutely can put that together for our fall presentation. We'll pull out our cohorts, and we can have that data for you guys then.
Okay, great. Director Robertson.
And one question that I had, and I think I had some conversation with the superintendent about this, is it fair to do an assessment shorter than 3 years about where the school is headed and how well they are progressing?
You know what, the thing is, the data is what the data is. We have it displayed all over the building. It might not be the most beautiful data, but that's what it is. And I think I kind of alluded to earlier, we wanted to look at K2 and why we see a nice trend upward, and then 3-5, why we see a kind of a downward trend. I'll be truthfully honest with you. You know, some of my teachers took that really hard when they saw some of the numbers, because we set some goals, and even though we didn't meet those goals, that percentage we wanted, we still had to kind of break it down and say, hey, we did make a step upward. It might not be where we want to be, but you know, our students still made a trendward upward. We're even trying to break down 5th grade and look at who our 5th graders were, who attended Jefferson Edison from K through 5, and see if Edison has been a great design for them. So I know that team's still breaking that down for us, because I'm curious to see, because we only had 22 kids once we had our promotional exercise that were with us from K through 5. So that's only one section, and we have 3 sections of students. So we were really curious to see what those 5th graders look like. You know, it's a year-by-year basis. The key thing is now looking at our 2nd graders who just finished 2nd grade, how well they're going to do in 3rd grade, because we really want to see them continue to accelerate. So that's going to be kind of the key focus there. We have some nice, good, hardcore data to look at. Are our kids trending up? Are our kids who are below proficiency, are they making some gains as well? So we're, you know, with that summer program, we'll have an after-school program now. We have a kinder jump program starting July 10th, so we're trying to get those kindergartners in our building a month before school starts to give them some of that enrichment. We're hoping some of these new opportunities with these grants will provide us a new direction and a new light for our students that, you know, by the end of 1st quarter, hopefully we're a little ahead of where we were last year. I know I didn't answer your question, but that's kind of, you know, where we're headed. So.
Well, and I just to bring us back to the cohorts, the graph that I put up here with the reading threshold data, we do have this broken out for every grade level, 2 through 5. So we do have, over the course of the last 3 years, you can see the growth as it relates to the evaluate. And again, with the proficiencies as well. And we do have that broken out by grade level, but we can also break it out by cohort over the course of the year. So we definitely can have that put together for you.
And finally, Christy, were you speaking out loud, or were you making a request when you said you would like to have a village in your school?
No, I'm you know, that's going to benefit our community. I mean, number one, you know, they're part of Davenport School. This is a partnership. And if we want these kids to be successful contributors to our society, I think that's going to be a need for our community area. So that was part of the design that was made before I was even there. I got one of the teachers brought me the plans, so I have the plans. That was supposed to be one of the phases for our building, and we definitely got the room to do it with that beautiful blacktop. I hate to get rid of it, but we got plenty of space to add that, and I think that would be a great asset to our district. Remember, you know, it's about the kids, it's about our community, and that's why I'm in this business. So if it's going to make these students stronger in the future, a brighter future. Dr. Taylor last principal meeting, he made us all speak about our schools, and I was talking about our motto and trying to instill in our students that can is more important than can't, and they need to strive higher and greater. And one thing is instilling that you guys are college capability material. It might not be college, but something beyond high school. And then that 5th grade promotion, almost every student got up and said pretty much they're going to go to college or what they wanted to become. So I think our message was pretty successful. They know they can. Can't is out of their vocabulary now.
And I thank you very much for all of you coming tonight, and I hope that we are listening.
And thank you for coming out to our buildings. I appreciate it. Dr. O, thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. This is our last one, so I might not get to see her too much anymore. But you're always welcome to come out to our building when you have a free moment. Thank you.
I think we're looking for a...
I'm looking for some more volunteers.
Well, we have a couple more questions, though. Director Zamora?
I don't have a question, and I don't want an answer. I just think if I were you, I'd look and see what I was doing in March.
Yes.
Yep, thank you. And Director Sherwood?
Yeah, I applaud you for your request for early childhood classrooms there. I think that every one of our elementaries should have early childhood components based in the schools. So I would support, once we have the funding stabilized for early childhood, I support that strongly. I also want to congratulate you for celebrating with your staff. We ask our staff across the district to do really monumental things, especially the last couple of years. And so I think that every building, every principal, it's incumbent on them to make sure that we communicate how much we appreciate that. I know sometimes the gains are small, but that doesn't mean the work isn't very difficult. So, communicate to your staff, too, that we really appreciate the effort they've been putting out.
Anything else? All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Move on to administrative reports.
I have none, Mr. President.
Then we'll move on to board reports or requests. Are there any? Director DeFau?
Not so much a report, but a reflection. And this is the evening I've been dreading for some time now, and not because of any vote that we're taking at this table, but because, as Principal Pitts alluded to, it's the last night that Dr. Leslie Amelia will be joining us. And I don't know if I have the words to really convey the amount of respect that I have for Dr. O. Her integrity, her insight, her wisdom. And her time here, I've come to rely heavily upon that. And I had to write this down, but I really did. But I'm gonna miss looking over Director Sherwood's shoulder to kind of gauge her read on some of the things happening at the board table. And I've got to say she's a good poker player because she rarely shows her hand. But I have really appreciated all the time and effort that you've given us, and you'll be truly, truly missed. And take note, Mr. Scott, you have some huge, huge, huge shoes to fill. So thank you, Dr. O.
Any additional board reports or requests? Director Sherwood?
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up, Nikki. Leslie, you were a wonderful mentor to me my first year here, and made things a lot easier, and you really are a professional educator, and we admire you. Director, what's your name? Johansson, and I attended the 2-day ALICE training. I think you mentioned it briefly last time, but I wanted to compliment Scott and Andy on that training. I thought it was high quality. It was valuable to me. I hope we continue to communicate to the district, though, that, and the trainer said this a number of times, that you're more likely to be struck by lightning 5 times than you are to have an active shooter in one of our schools. So we have very safe places for children to go to school, but we are maximizing our efforts to make sure that they remain that very safe places. And again, compliments on that. Second thing is I went to North High School Saturday night to the play, which was I'll never see another butterfly. And I didn't think high school kids could really move you, but these kids were exceptional. The staging was excellent. The direction was excellent. Just a very, very impressive performance, and I think they're going to do well in their competition that they're heading off to.
Any other reports or requests? Well, if there are none, then I have to comment also on Dr. O. I was thinking about all of the good things that she has represented and all of the really neat ways that she thinks. When we've had a chance to work together on the policy committee, and in that committee you talk about different things and you think this way and that way, and once in a while she would sway the way that I think, and and so but I have to say too that as I thought about student achievement, and I think about what's important, and all of us are about student achievement, and I believe that she has helped student achievement significantly in our district. I've learned a lot in the time that I've been around her, and sometimes I sit down and talk and try to absorb some of her wisdom. But I wanted to say also that she is just plain fun. You know, she really is. And when we would talk philosophically, that kind of entered into the conversation, is that you've got to have fun doing what you're doing. So we will all miss you, Dr. O, for sure. So. All right, unless there's any more discussion, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. So moved. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. This meeting is adjourned.